So today's webinar, we're going to talk about mainly, this is the first in a series of webinars that I'm putting together here. And this one's going to be talking about bringing in existing conditions into InfraWorks. My goal for this series is to go from InfraWorks, bringing in the existing conditions, sketching in some designs, sketching in some proposals, and then exporting all that out and taking it into Civil 3D, finishing it off there. And then maybe at some point go into 3ds Max. That's the whole goal here. Maybe in there along the way throw in some Navisworks. Okay, so let's go ahead and first begin by creating a new project. Okay, when you click the new button, you're going to notice in InfraWorks that I've clicked it. It just takes a little while to react here. This location right here will be where your project folder resides. Okay, I'm just putting it on my hard drive here, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. The data set that I'm working with, please forgive me, but it comes from the England area. I was looking for one, putting together one more local, but I found a complete data set that works fine, and it's the concept that we're looking at. So it's just the matter of understanding what the data sets, the process that we're going through. Okay. So I'm going to call this is going to be representing the new town center of a city in England, and we're going to define the model extent here. Okay. Now, for this example, I'm going to type in my lower bottom left corner for my X. I have these numbers available to me already, and I will show you also here shortly, after I type these numbers in, that I can also obtain these numbers from within the data file that I'm importing. So if you don't know the extent of your project, in this case I do, but if you don't know the extent of your file, you can actually click on this button right here, and when this pops up, you'll notice that you can load any of these files right there. I've got DEM files, DOQ files, ECW files, JPEG images, TIFF files, SID imagery. Any of those items right there can be used to define the extent of your project. Okay, and of course they do have to have GIS data associated with it, otherwise it's just an image in space. Okay, so in this instance I already know where my lower X and my upper X and my lower Y and my upper Y are located. So I'm going to go ahead and now assign it the coordinate system. Now this represents the coordinate system that I'm going to be working in. Okay, so to assign it a coordinate system, you can click on this world button, and like I said, we're going to be in the New England area, so it's actually not the New England area, the England area, and where I'm going to be in is Great Britain, and I'm going to be assigning it British National Grid feet. This is the coordinate system that I want to work in. I can simply double click it, and it adds it to there. But if I've used it already once, which I have, there it is right there in my list. So it keeps an ongoing list of items you've used already in the past. Okay. So now I'm just going to verify that I'm using the imperial road standards versus metric, obviously. Even though I'm taking some data from Europe, I want to use feet and inches still. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and this will take about, on average, I've timed it for this project about 50 to 60 seconds for it to build this. This is actually the longest part of, I should say, quiet time within this webinar here. It's actually building the model, and you'll see why shortly, why it takes so long. Okay, so let it pop up. It's actually locating itself in the world, not just a flat area and blank space. Is locating itself in the world, and that's why it takes so long. We should be here. Okay, here it comes. Okay. This is InfraWorks. Okay, and I don't need this right now. So this is why it took a little bit of time. As you can see, it located itself, like I said, in Great Britain, and that spot right there is where I'm at. Now if I ever start panning around and zooming around and messing up, I can always come back up here to this button right here, and it takes me back to my home view. Okay, so now that I've got this, let's verify that my units are correct. because remember I am coming from Europe. So let's come over here and let's come down here to my application options, and I want to go to my unit configuration, and I see that it is using imperial units. My length and width are in feet, my station is in feet, and so on and so on. So this is correct. Okay? So now that I've got this set up here, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my existing condition data. So the idea here is I've received a number of GIS data files from the local government that I can use to display the existing conditions. When I import the data, you're going to see it's going to be imported, and then I have to configure it. Okay? So since all the data came from the government, in this particular case, I'm lucky that all the data has the same coordinate system, but I'll explain along the way why that's critical here. So let's go ahead and click this button here, and I'm going to go ahead and manage my model, and I want to bring up the data sources. Okay? So in the Data Sources tab, I have the option to import GIS data. Here is all the data that I can import. I can import 3D models, AutoCAD 3D drawings, Civil 3D drawings, and so on and so on. As you can see here, of course, we work primarily with shape files and point clouds and XML files and so on. For this example that we're doing today, I'm going to be using a land XML file to represent my terrain. And I have a folder here, so it takes me right there. This is the Danville LiDAR XML file. So this is an XML file. I'm connecting to it. Okay? It's actually, if you think of this as for all of you Map 3D users or Civil 3D users who bring in GIS data, this is very similar to connecting to the map by attaching files within the Map workspace in the Map Explorer tab. This is very similar, except it's not actually doing the connection, like keeping that connection tied in. I'm just importing it here. Okay, so give that some time, and let me go ahead and make this available to you so you can see. So as you can see, I've imported this LiDAR XML file. Okay, and you don't see anything on my screen because it's not configured. To configure this, I can simply right-click on this and select Configure. Now, in this particular instance, this came from the government, and the government has assigned it a coordinate zone of British National Grid. Okay? Now, this is not the coordinate zone I'm working in, but this is the coordinate zone assigned to the file. So therefore, when I import this, it's going to do the transformation and properly locate itself. Okay? That's all I need to do right here. I'm going to click Close and Refresh. This will take a little bit of time, but you're going to see that it's processing the data, and it's going to then, if you watch that big gray box here on my screen, you're going to see that the terrain will eventually pop into place. The hardest part about all this is just letting it process. It really is. So this should be almost done. And I could have done a video for this, but I prefer real time, so therefore you all can get an idea of how long it really does take. And come on, there's my screen. So as you can see, I now have terrain on my model. Okay, and there's some areas right there that this actually represents a river we're going to be looking at here in a little while. Okay, again, I can always go back to my original view there. Okay, so I brought in the XML file. The next thing I'm going to bring in is some raster imagery, because all that doesn't mean anything to me until I see some images on top of my screen. Now, I've got a whole bunch of JPEG files here. What I want you to see here is I'm going to import these all together. I'm just going to select them all, and I'm going to say Open. And when I say this, look how fast that took. I mean, compared to doing other type of images in Civil 3D or in Map 3D, I'm ready to start configuring here. So what I'm going to do is, earlier I right-clicked and configured, but I also can just simply double-click on this and configure it. Okay? So what I'm going to be doing here is setting my geolocation first. Again, this comes in from the British National Grid. Okay? And there's one more item I need to do here. I want to come over here. Oh, sorry. This is going to be, ground imagery. And I don't have to do any draping here because it already read it. I'm sorry, it's the next item that I'm going to be doing draping. So this one's ready to go. I simply click close and refresh, and you're going to go ahead and watch the left side of my screen there, and you're going to see that it's going to overlay the imagery on top of that terrain. It's actually going to drape it over to follow the terrain. Okay, so it's almost done. We'll let that come in here. The concept here is that we get all this GIS data, and this is a great way to collaborate and to analyze what's going on here. So I'm going to come back over here where that hilly area is, and you'll see that now I have, there's my terrain following with the images built on top of it. Also, look how fast I am panning, zooming, analyzing this data. Okay, InfraWorks is designed so it allows you to pan, zoom, and scroll around with ease. Okay, so now I've got some images. I've got my terrain in there. I've also obtained some other data from the city, and in this data it's all going to be SDF data, and you're going to see that I have underground utilities, I've got water areas, and I've got buildings. Let's go ahead and bring them all in. I'm going to bring them all in, and there they are. Okay, and I can now configure each one. So I'm going to double click on the buildings so I can configure the buildings. Okay, and the buildings are going to be set to be buildings, and depending on what I click here will drive what happens here. Okay, so there's my buildings. Now by default the roof height is 33 feet, but I'm going to change that. I want my roof heights to be 10 foot for 1 story, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And for those of you who understand Map 3D and object data tables, this data that we're getting here is coming from the object data table. So I'm going to come over here to the geometry here. I'm sorry, numeric, and go to stories. And I want my stories, to be multiplied. Let's come over here to my math. Multiply by 10. Okay. Now I could type in 10 here, but I wanted to show you that based off the stories, these are the feature data, the object data that comes already embedded in there. I can type in 10. And so it's going to take my stories, multiply by 10, thus giving me a 10-foot, 1-story building. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here to my geolocation, verify it's in British National Grid. And then I'm going to come over to my source tab. And the reason I'm here is because I do have to tell this to drape over my terrain. If I don't tell it to drape over my terrain, I'm going to have all my buildings on the same level, and some might be above, some might be below the terrain. Okay, I'm going to hit close and refresh. I'm going to zoom in, and you're going to see that all my buildings are now populated inside here. Okay, of course they're just blank boxes that represent the footprints of buildings, but we're going to configure those here shortly, and I'm going to differentiate them from one or another. Okay, so back to my home here. So now let's bring in the water area. Let's configure our water. Okay, this will also be water areas. Again, drives what I see here. All I have to do here is make sure that the coordinate system is what I want, or what it's assigned to that. British National Grid, and for the source I am going to go ahead and drape that as well. Yeah, let's go ahead and drape that. And one last thing I want to do is for water areas, I want to convert closed polylines to polygons, similar to the convert closed polylines to polygons in Map 3D. Close and refresh, and watch this river that appears here. Okay, so that represents my water area, as you can see, and if I zoom in and tilt that a little, the nice thing is I can see water flow going down my river here. In a future episode, we're going to talk about how to change that reflection, because it's all dependent on daylight and time of day, and there is a possibility to change the wind speed so that water can flow a little bit faster or slower according to what you need. But again, keep in mind the process that I'm doing and how fast the software is configuring all this information. Okay, so last thing I want to do is my underground utilities. Okay. And for my underground utilities, I'm going to set this to be pipelines. Okay. And I am going to go to the geolocation area. I'm going to make sure I'm using British National Grid. And for the pipelines, I don't need to drape them. I don't want them to be draped on top of my surface. So I don't drape. I'm going to hit close and refresh. And you're going to notice that in the areas here, this is similar to AutoCAD. I have layering. So let me go ahead and turn off my water, my images, and let's go ahead and turn off my terrain surface and hit that apply here. I can turn off layers to analyze. And there are my water lines right there in the middle of my screen, those red lines here. And the levels of depth are driven by the information in the file wherever you got them from. So it's very important that whoever's configuring those files is doing it properly. As you can see, I have a couple of pipelines here that aren't connecting to stuff down here. Okay, so I just wanted to stress that here, because when I bring this back up, you will see that some of those pipelines are actually above the ground, like right here. And we know that's not the way it is, but that's neither here nor there for this demo. This is just to discuss the idea that if your data files aren't correct, you're going to see some problems within your drawing, or within your model, I should say. This is not a drawing, this is a model. Okay? So now that I went ahead and brought in all that information, as you can see, I got buildings, I've got images, I've got underground pipelines. There's one more thing that I want to bring in. Let me zoom into this, just an area right here. Let me find an area right here. That's fine. I'm going to bring in some existing roads. Okay, as you can see, I got some roads out here. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and the existing roads that were given to me were SQLite files. Okay, and there they are, existing roads. These are going to be road center lines. Okay, so just like the others, I'm going to configure those. These are going to be roads, and I'm going to come into my geolocation. It accepted British National Grid because the file already talked to the software and said, okay, here you go, this is what you need. And I am going to drape those roads along my surface. I will close and refresh. And as you can see, I now have road data in my file. And these are all the roads provided to me by the city. Now, of course, we can, change the style of the road. We can modify the road the way it looks. But this is just the beginning process of getting this information into your drawing. Okay? So, now that all that's set there, let's stylize things. We're going to stylize buildings. Okay? You can stylize just about anything. But we're going to stylize buildings, and we're going to set some parameters to style. So I don't need the data sources anymore. Okay? I'm going to come over here to my style rules and set some rule styles here. For my buildings, I got to make sure I'm in the buildings tab. You got to be careful here because it's easy to get lost here. But as you can see, I can stylize buildings, barriers, city furniture, coverage areas, and this list can go on and on. Watersheds, watershed areas, streams, trees. There's so much you can do here. It's actually amazing. Okay, so let's stylize the buildings. So I'm going to do 5 different stylizations if I'm not mistaken here. First thing I'm going to do is a single family style. Okay, so all my single family buildings will look a specific way. And click that OK. So here's my single family, and I'm going to modify that style. Okay, and I'm going to set an expression that says anytime, let's come over to the building, anytime there's a building with a roof height equal, now I was given the parameters here, and the parameter is 3.048, which is that 1 meter. But here I'm going to come down here to roof height. I could have typed it in, but I wanted to show you that I can select on roof height, and these are the parameters that the roof height have available to them. So there's 3.048, 6.096. All these are in that data table. I just simply double click. So anytime that I see a building whose roof height is equal to that, I want to have a style whose I get to choose the way that I want this to look. And in this case, I'll just do concrete and glass, and I'm going to pick something, I don't know, I'll just pick this one right here. Of course I picked one that I can't pronounce, Arvigorous, but that's fine, okay? So anytime that it sees a roof height of this, it's going to assign it a style of that, okay? On to the next one, okay? This will be multi-family, okay? And for this one, let's go modify that. Same concept. Anytime that the building has a roof height whose value is equal to, and now I've got a number, because I showed you those numbers earlier. In this case, it's 6.096, okay? So I'm just doing this to show you that you can type it, or you can go select it from the list, okay? And this one, I want to have it with a style of that right there, okay? So anytime that it has that roof height, that's going to have a building look to that, okay? This is how I start separating my buildings one from another, okay? So let's do a few more. I'm going to do, actually I didn't want to edit that one. I want to do a new one, sorry. I want to do small businesses, okay? And for small businesses, this one will say, anytime this has a roof height, and I'm going to change these up in the next item here, so it's not all roof height equal to. You'll see here in a little while what I'm talking about, 9.144. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to add a facade brick, sure, Blackbird. Okay, and click OK. So there's small business. Two more, and we'll be done here. I'm going to do apartments now. And for my apartment buildings, I'm going to have this one just a little bit different. This one's going to detect any building that's got a roof height equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and bring these up here for now because I want to show you a few things here. A roof height equal to 12.192, or, and that's where these come into place, I can come in here to do logical, or a roof height equal to 15.24. It's going to assign those buildings as apartments. So as you can see, I can start building a different type of expression, okay? So I'm going to click OK. And for my apartments, I'm going to assign them a style of, let me see what we got here, anything worth it. I'll just use this one, I guess. I'm just looking for something different than the other. I'm looking at these, trying to make sure I'm getting something different here, okay? And the last one, we're going to do offices. Now offices, I will pick a specific style because I want them to look a specific way. So this one's going to be an office building, and this one's going to have any building whose roof height is greater than or equal to, and we'll go look at my options here, my roof heights here, roof height. Any building that's got a height greater than or equal to 30.48, I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to assign this. Now I want my building, my office buildings to look pretty sharp, so I'm going to do concrete and glass. Actually, yeah, concrete, metal. I want metal and glass. That's the one I was like. See, this is the one I found earlier for my office buildings. Scaffold. Okay. I'm going to click OK. Now nothing happens until I run the rules. In the bottom right-hand corner here, you see where it says Run Rules. I'm going to go ahead and run it and let it do its thing. It's applying these rules to my drawing. And you can see here That, it didn't take my, that should be an office building. Oh, there we go. As we zoomed in, I was saying, wait, I need that. Okay, so I've got single family buildings here. I've got some multifamily here. Got office buildings here. As you can see, the looks are a little bit different. Okay, but we're going to focus in a general area, and actually, I'm right there already. I'm going to focus on this building right here. This building right here. So I've gone through and I've stylized the entire city here. But now I want to stylize just one building. Okay? So I'm going to close my style rules palette here. I'm going to come over here to my style palette, and this is going to be the last thing we do here. Okay? I'm going to come over to my facade, and I want to do marble and stone, I guess. Yeah. Earlier I found this style right here for historic buildings. This building right here represents the governor's mansion in the city that we're residing in here. Okay? And I want that governor's mansion to have a historical look to it. It's supposed to be some older model of a building. So earlier when I did the style rules, I applied style rules globally here, but now I'm going to just apply a style to one building in particular. And it's so simple. I simply find the style that I want, simply drag and drop. And you're going to see that my style changes to represent the style just for that building. Okay? So the whole idea of this webinar, and I know it's a small webinar today, okay, but the whole idea of this webinar is to establish existing conditions based off some GIS data, creating your model, and we started roughly about 30 minutes ago, and I'm already done. So as you can see, it's not that hard, and I brought in several images, and mainly what I want you to see is how easy it is to pan, zoom, scroll around as well. In a future webinar, actually in the next webinar, I'm going to continue with this model, okay, and we're going to bring in a proposal. We're going to create a proposal. We're going to sketch in some conceptual roads, have different versions of that road, and we're going to analyze it using the 3D tools and the lighting that's inside of InfraWorks, so we can analyze how our design will be before we take it to Civil 3D. Okay? So I hope this answered at least the beginning of your, for those of you who are not using InfraWorks, I hope this at least shows what the power of InfraWorks can do. Even if you just use it to analyze GIS data just to see what's going on, this software is very powerful in that sense. It's very powerful. So I'm going to hand this back to Mallory. I don't know if we have any questions, but if we do, you can go ahead and post them through there. I don't see any questions in our list. Anybody have any questions? Mallory?
Sorry, I had myself on mute. I do see a few questions.
No.
If you look at let me pull this down real quick. Let's see. Will there be a copy of this webinar somewhere? Yes, we are recording the webinar, and we'll post it most likely to our YouTube channel, and we'll send everyone a link so that you can view it after the webcast. And then I see another one. The data, it says the data being used is in formats that local cities in Texas don't give. Would you do anything different with a SHP file?
No, actually the whole idea, the reason I said it's okay with doing it with this data, at first I was reluctant to do it with this data because most people in Texas are using shapefile data, but configuring it, importing it, all that, the whole concept there, it's all done the same exact way, whether it's a shapefile, SQLite file, LiDAR file, or whatever those files were in my data sources list. In this data sources list, all these files get configured in the same manner. Okay?
Okay, another question. Does this seminar apply only to InfraWorks 360?
No, I have not touched 360 yet. Okay, what you're looking at right now is just InfraWorks. 360 happens when I sign in and I want to upload the stuff, the data up to the 360 website so it can configure. So up to this point, we're only talking InfraWorks. Even though as you can see in the top left corner, it says InfraWorks 360. Everything that I can do in this webinar, I can also do in just regular InfraWorks.
Okay, and then there's another question. Where did you get the files that you imported?
Those files actually came from a friend of mine over at Autodesk. I was talking to someone and I needed some data sets, and a buddy of mine in England said, I got this information here. You can take a look at it. So it was a complete data set that I just said, you know what, I'll use it.
Okay, and another question. Can you export a scene into another 3D software package like 3ds Max?
Not directly into 3ds Max, but you can take the data from here to Civil 3D because this is not finished design. When we get to, you're going to have to understand that we have to also configure the roads, because when you go to 3ds Max, you can use the civil view. The civil view is running off of alignments and the surface rastering, the surface imagery, and all that stuff that's already in Civil 3D. So I don't have alignments in this drawing. Even though I do see road center lines, they're not configured as alignments.
Okay. There's another question that it's a follow-up to the question about where you got the files from that you imported. He asked if I'm working in a project in Texas, where can I get the files?
In Texas, the most popular website that people are using in Texas is the TNRIS website, Texas Natural Resource. I know it's tnris.org. Okay. I've also used USGS maps from the usgs.gov website. I know that there are several universities in Texas. Texas Tech has a really robust GIS website. I mean, you can get it from the cities, your local cities. The city of Austin has a great GIS website for the city itself. I know the city of San Antonio, they're not as friendly in handing out that information, and I'm not sure how the city of Dallas or Fort Worth or any other city in between handles their GIS data. I deal mainly with the central Texas area, but you can there's numerous amounts of websites that you can go find GIS data. TNRIS is usually where I start for the Texas as a whole, and then I might contact the local city government to find out where they might have their data.